Hello everyone, welcome to the channel one more time. Today we are with Evia. Hello Evia.
Hello.
She is from Latvia and she will be sharing with us her life experience. Hello Evia. How old are you Evia?
I am 39.
How was your childhood?
My childhood was amazing. I had freedom and I could explore and I was nurtured, and it was all about being included and part of the life that my family had and the adults that were in my life had, and I felt incredibly safe.
Was in Latvia your childhood? You passed your childhood
Yeah, I
there.
grew up in Latvia.
What did you learn from this stage as a child?
Well, I learned probably just from observing what the people that surrounded me did. Just the basic stuff. And then obviously, I think it kind of cemented fundamentally my understanding of the world and relationships and what people mean to each other. And it just taught me, the good stuff, the stuff that basically gave me the platform to be who I am today.
What did you learn from this part of the life to be adolescents? As adolescents, what did you learn being in adolescence?
I didn't actually know myself that well when I was growing up as a young person. So I was very lucky because I had an opportunity to explore the world in a completely different way that the most people of my age could have even dreamt of. And that gave me an enormous ability to basically learn and experience things that I otherwise couldn't have done. And it really showed me what I'm made of.
How has been your experience as an adult?
My experience as an adult has been varied. We all have, difficulties and good times and challenges and a lot of joy. And I think for the most part, I can definitely say that my experience as an adult has been a good one because it's been guided by some, fundamental principles of, who we are as human beings and how we should be. But also, I had some really difficult periods in my life, and I've overcome some really tough challenges.
Can you mention, for example, one challenge that you are passing through?
Well, the most recent, I think, and it's fair to say that it's most recent because I have had two encounters at this point that I have overcome, is how it is to be in an abusive relationship, both mentally and physically abusive one. I was married to my soon-to-be ex-husband for 8.5 years, and unfortunately I was in an abusive marriage, and subsequently that broke down and I got away from it. I lived independently for a while, and then, unbeknownst to myself, fell for another man who was also abusive. So yeah, that's the part that has been the most difficult and challenging for me in the recent years. Learning to be again myself, and learning not to repeat the cycle, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have support from, people, professional support? I mean, psychologist or someone woman institutes. I don't know where women that are having this kind of situation can go for help.
Yeah, I
some
think
help.
it is very important to recognize when you actually need help, you have to ask for it, because unfortunately nobody knows what's happening inside of us, you know, and if you don't actively look for it, then you're most likely not going to receive any. But there is help out there. I mean, from just simple things like going to talk to your GP. I was really lucky to have an extremely kind, compassionate human being working in my GP practice. Jilly. She's a mental health nurse and she's absolutely extraordinary, compassionate, kind human being who saw me for who I was and who trusted what I was about and who worked with me and completely relied on me knowing myself. And it was also nice to just have an outlet, someone who would listen without a judgment and, you know, give me a bit of a leg up, so to speak, with my self-esteem. And yeah, it's very vital that you do get support if you find yourself in a difficult situation like that, because no man is an island and nobody should be alone. And then I started thinking about what else I can do to better myself, because I found myself in a situation where I was isolated because of many things that were done, and I just needed to get out, and I felt the need to go and talk about my experience, to actually just kind of dig myself out of the hole that I found myself in. So I inquired about what's out there, what's available, and I came across the Women's Centre.
Women's Centre.
And again, this is a place where, you know, I found myself wondering whether I was actually a fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't help but think that, you know, oh, it's all right, you're not as bad as you think that you are, you know, that you probably don't need as much help as other people do. And then you go in and you speak to professionals, and what professionals they are as well. Honestly, every single woman that works there is an absolute superstar. Honestly, an absolute rock star.
So you join a group where you can talk about abusive situations. There were men too, men, women, all.
So Calderdale Staying Safe specifically is now a place that all people can go to, because abuse doesn't actually discriminate whether you're a man or a woman, you know, whether you're, you know, green or red or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It happens to all of us, and most of the time it happens without us even knowing. So yes, it's, when I joined, I went to a women's only group, and this was not of my own choosing. This was because I spoke to a caseworker, somebody who's a medical doctor, educated in the area of psychology, who said, I think you'd benefit from this, and I think that, you know, you need somewhere to at least come and be for a while, you know, be yourself and all that. So yeah, I went onto a course called Freedom Program, which basically works with domestic abuse victims, but mostly is centered around females, because it is a fact, unfortunately, that still the largest amount of domestic violence happens to females, and most often they are killed by a man. So yeah, I went to that, and I am now doing a course called Own My Life, which is a theory course, I suppose, in a way, that focuses on what trauma is and how to deal with it in a way where you can work with yourself and at your own pace, I suppose. to understand how it's impacted you and what it is that you can do to help yourself to not be traumatized again or anymore, if that's the matter.
Out of that group, is it's very difficult to talk about this subject outside with, I mean, it's like it's still a subject or topic that no one wants to talk about. What do you think about this?
Yeah, of course. When you're going through a certain experience and it is not something that's widely accepted in society, it's a taboo subject, ultimately, something that's surrounded by stigma. I can tell you for a fact, somebody who isn't a professional and hasn't been through the situation you've been, they don't understand. The best you will get is a sympathy. Probably the worst that can happen to you is the pity of other people. But you kind of tend to be like put in a box and like being felt sorry for, and you stop existing as a human being, because we all as humans crave connection and we care for being heard and seen. And I think when you go through a hard time that's impacted on your mental health, on your self-esteem and your self-awareness, and on your social standing, it is very hard not to feel like every single person is somehow judging you because they're somehow better than you. And so this is why safe spaces like the Women's Centre and specific audience targeted groups exist, to allow you to talk about your feelings, to talk about your experiences in a group where you can feel comfortable with, because you're surrounded with similar people, so that you can then step out and carry that message on in your real life without feeling like you have to justify yourself for who you are and allow the trauma, the impact of somebody else's action define you as a person.
And I guess there are a lot of ignorance about what abuse is.
Yes.
It's a lot of kinds of abuse. Can you talk about this, please?
Well, abuse is basically something that happens when people are trying to take something from you that they don't have. There is no other reason why abuse happens. I think it's always the case of you being the source of certain thing, a quality, or I don't know, it could be anything, but you ultimately will be drowned of it. Like, you will be not drowned, drained of it, because there is absolutely no need for anyone to harm or hurt another human being unless you really truly want something that another person possesses. So abuse in its forms exists as emotional, as physical, and there is also mental abuse, which is kind of similar to the emotional abuse, but that's more sinister because it's basically something that someone's planning very thoroughly and with an intent to hurt you. And then there's financial abuse. Obviously we all know about verbal abuse, which is part of the emotional abuse as well. And in most situations you find that all of these things are just the one thing. You don't, as a victim, ever recognize that all of these things altogether are happening to you. You just know that this one bad thing that makes you feel in a certain way is happening to you. And in fact, it's sometimes so intense and so demeaning to you as a human being that you don't even get to think about what's happening to you. You no longer have, normal senses. You're kind of constantly in a flight or fight mode, where you are basically now fighting for your life, because that's what's happening to you. Somebody's trying to take you or a very important integral piece of you away, and every human being with, you know, instinct to survive will eventually feel like they have to protect themselves. So yeah, abuse usually happens with good people, kind-hearted people, empaths mostly, who want to do well and want to do good and who care about other humans intensely. And it's a very sobering experience when that happens to you, because you almost lose the safety net and the sort of like the little filter glasses that you walk around in, because we all see the world the way that we are as human beings. So for me, I was walking around, you know, thinking everyone's good and everyone's kind and everyone looks after each other, except it isn't that way. And you know, sometimes you have to have that to gain a different perspective and grow and develop as a human being, to then be able to actually function better, you know.
Why you think it's important to talk about this subject? Is why? Because there's violence against children, against teenagers, against women, against sometimes the teenagers, against the parents. So why you think it's important?
Well, ignorance is bliss, isn't it? If you don't talk about a subject that affects yourself, you're not really being honest, you know, and you're kind of denying a piece of vital information to the rest of the world. But I also think it's very important to talk about uncomfortable subjects a lot of the time, because not all of our conversations are about weather or what we had for dinner or what to put on our shopping list, you know. And I think by and large people have forgotten how to converse and what is actually important, what to talk about. And it becomes a very superficial existence where we allow for a stigma to creep in, because we're not comfortable to talk about difficult subjects and we're not comfortable to express our true beliefs and feelings about certain things. Well, people need to remember nothing's ever comfortable, you know. You have to either forget that you can judge when you have a conversation with someone, or you really have to know what you're talking about. And again, ignorance is a bliss. In nowadays society, it feels as though there is absolutely no substance in what we do on our everyday basis. And which is why it's so hard in the 21st century, 2024, to actually not feel like a failure, because you don't fit in the frame anymore, you don't fit in a box anymore, you know. And I wish that people would actually realize we're not that perfect. We're not that perfect. But I think social media, especially TV, newspapers, have made it so that nothing can be less than a perfection. It has to be perfect, polished, filtered to the point where, you know, there is no fault to be found. It has to be entertaining, but it also hasn't got to be obtrusive. It has to basically fit every narrative. And yes, there are subjects, abuse is definitely one of those, that will never fit into anyone's narrative. And those are literally existential questions that somebody will be asking on an everyday basis and will be struggling with. And the less we talk about it, the less we will be able to find healthy, rational people in our society. It's just how it is.
What do you think about hate?
Well, hate is a very strong feeling, isn't it? I think hate, wow. Well, hate is another form of anger, ultimately, in its purest form, I think. But it's also a mirror image of us and how we feel about what's been done to us. So I think it's natural for a human being to feel upset or angry, but that is sort of like an almost immediate reaction to something or a situation, or you know, it doesn't impact on you, it doesn't take away from you, it doesn't affect your everyday life. Hate is something that's just all consuming. It basically creates agendas and sort of like fuels very intense, determined actions with an expectancy of an outcome. And I think people lose themselves when they tune into that. Yeah, I don't do hate.
What do you think about forgiveness?
Well, forgiveness is a gift to oneself. Ultimately, as human beings, we're all free in our essence to explore, to do, to create, to live, to love, to die in the end of the day, you know. And forgiveness is something that should be the easiest bit to do, because it comes from within, isn't it? It comes from knowing yourself, loving yourself, from an enormous amount of self-compassion, and the forgiveness isn't for anyone else but for you. You know, the other person can't give it to you. It's just not possible. So oftentimes, especially, I find I'm a bit culturally challenged still, I think. It's a cultural phenomenon when you find yourself being inclined to apologize repeatedly for things that don't need an apology for, and you think, why? You know, because you don't want to be inconveniencing anyone, or because you feel like you've done something wrong, or maybe you could perceive in a different way than what your intentions were. Yeah, forgiveness is something that is requiring an enormous amount of self-introspection and self-awareness, and it comes from a place where there is no divide between who you are as a person and what you intend to do as a person. That's all it is.
Are you proud of yourself?
Yes, I am very proud of myself. I mean, I've had, and I'm still having, the most amazing journey with everything that has happened to me. I'm really, really grateful for all of the experiences that I've had before and after this point here and forwards. But there's one thing that I have learned throughout all of my life, is that I am one of the most capable people that I know. I am capable, and I'm so proud of that fact, because there are a lot of people out there that will say I can't, and I'm one of those that will say, watch me.
What love means for you?
What love means for me? Well, I suppose from some very basic points, you know, we all want the same thing, don't we? We want to be cherished, and we want to be cared for, and we want to feel like we've got a bond with the other person. And it doesn't matter in what kind of relationships you are, if you're talking about friendship, if you're talking about family, or if you're talking about someone that you've just met, or, you know, love is a bond that you create between yourself and the world, and how you see all things that you care about. I think love is basically knowing who you are authentically as yourself, and living through that prism of self-awareness, and, you know, just ensuring that it carries on. I think it's very difficult to obviously explain what love means because it's so many things to so many people, but I think it's very important to remember that it all starts with us and it all ends with us, and that's what love is.
Do you have a child?
I do. I've got a wonderful 6-year-old boy.
What do you think is the most important thing for a child?
The most important thing for the child is to be loved. It's the safety and security, and it's every single need that they have, that it's met basically. So everything, emotional well-being, social well-being, and their educational needs. And but yeah, for a child, the most important bit is to know that they're safe. That's all it is.
What have you learned from your child?
I have learned to look at the life through a prism of joy and just fun and the little things that you don't appreciate because you never have time as an adult. And you know, children are incredibly perceptive. They're like little sponges that just like absorb everything. And yeah, my little boy is incredibly well attuned to the world around him. He's incredibly emotionally intelligent and literate in so many ways that is still surprising me. But every day is just a miracle for them, you know. If you nurture them and if you give them what they need, it's almost like you could just, you know, cherish them and look at them, and that's all. Like, that's your life's work there, you know, if you do it right. So it's an enormous responsibility as well as a parent. You know, to be a parent is the most incredible experience I've ever had in my life, you know. And every day I still sort of like learn and just amaze myself with the stuff that happens to me and what else is there, like everything. Yeah, it's incredible. But I think from Jacob specifically, I have learned to just not take things too seriously, just to have fun and just enjoy myself.
What do you do when you are having hard times?
I sing.
Sing.
Yeah, I sing. I think I do all of the same things that most people do. You know, I carve some time out for myself to do things that matter to me. And sometimes it requires actively stopping yourself in the track and just going, right, I need time to just stop and think and give myself a bit of a break so that I can rest, so that I can function again. So it could be a book that you read. I usually just go on a walk like 4 hours at a time because I have got the time.
That's important too, because
Yeah.
otherwise
I don't know, like it's about what suits everyone. Like, you know, for me it's just about the little things, like where I can shift my focus just enough so that I don't have to be stuck in that one place where I'm consumed with this one thing, because it's very easy to give into it and then it kind of takes your life in a completely different direction. And I think also it's easy to say that, you know, you're having a tough time most of the time, because it is like that. It's the world we live in. I think when you think about it at large, I think it's important to create a routine almost, like, or at least an understanding of yourself and what impacts on you, so that you can manage it from a perspective where you don't have to find yourself in a hard time, you know. Because a lot of the time people say, oh, I don't quite know how I feel about certain things, and like I think it's going to be very difficult, and you start avoiding that stuff, and I think you deny yourself a lot of experience that otherwise would probably be beneficial, because it wouldn't be happening otherwise. So yeah, I don't shy away from hard times. I just get through it.
well done. Okay, Evia. Thank you very much
You're
for
welcome.
this lovely interview. Hope everyone enjoy this and take the part of all advices or information that you can find here if you are having the same situation in your life. Hope this help you. Thank you very much for stay with us and see you in the next interview. Bye bye. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye bye.